The general assumption among many non-Southerners is that there is a great amount of animosity between white and black Southerners. One thing that politicians do not want us to find out is that the political racial divide in the South is an artificial divide that was created by the ruling elite of the federal empire post-war. They created this divide in order to facilitate their control of the newly created federal empire. Prior to the war, Northern opinion of slavery down south was that it was evil, sadistic, racist Southerners who were constantly abusing their slaves. An entire region of the country where black Southerners were held in chains and were anxiously awaiting an opportunity to kill their evil white oppressors. Northern opinion of Southerners was that we were all as evil as Simon Legree, the fictional slave owner portrayed in Uncle Tom's Cabin. All white Southerners, slaveholders and non-slaveholders alike, were portrayed as evil people who were responsible for the sin of slavery in America. Now, if this had been true, then the war for Southern independence would not have lasted any longer than perhaps 90 days, as Lincoln and his war governors thought. They had expected in the South to see a massive uprising, a Haiti type of slave revolt, and a massacre of whites all throughout the South. But this didn't happen. With all the able-bodied white males away from the plantation, away from homes, away from villages, away from the cities, at the front fighting, why did it not happen? The politically incorrect but true fact is that men such as Mr. Wilson Carter, who was a slave from Georgia, but he served in the Confederate Army the entire war. He was a proud member of the United Confederate Veterans after the war and Reconstruction. Yes, there were some bad slave owners, but the vast majority were not evil as portrayed by Northern newspapers, propagandists, and political radicals. For the majority of white Southerners, the question was not if slavery would be abolished, but when and how. It was a difficult question in the mid-1800s. It had never been done before in a democracy. That's strange to our ears here in the 21st century, but back then, it was totally a new adventure. Race relations in Dixie has always been, shall we say, interesting. While black Southerners may have hated slavery, they did not hate their white friends and neighbors. Black Southerners had adopted the Christian faith and values held by most of the white Southerners. It really was not that dissimilar from the racial views of black Southerners during the 1960s civil rights movement. Certainly, they hated discrimination, but they did not hate their white friends and neighbors. Lincoln, thinking that there would be a massive slave revolt, initiated a war of invasion against the South. Why? Why did he initiate this? Well, it was simple. Prior to the war, the South provided the federal government with 75% of its operating revenues. Lincoln and his war governors knew that if they allowed the people of the South to establish a government of their own, then the North would lose this irreplaceable source of profits. Aggressive war was the solution. Throughout the North, headlines and editorials declared, quote, "No, we must not let the South go." You see, Northern love of black Southerners was never a part of the political motivation for aggressive war. Now, after the South withdrew from the United States, when we seceded from the Union, what did the Republicans do who were then in control of Congress? There were numerous slave states in the Union that still held men in bondage. Did the Republicans rush to emancipate those slaves? No, they did not. What they did was immediately pass an increase in the tariff, the largest tariff ever passed, and one that they could not have passed as long as the South remained in the Union. You see, money and profits were the North's primary concern, not any concern for black Southerners. When the Constitution was authored in 1787, the North insisted that the slaves only count as 3/5 of a person. A black Southerner didn't count as one human being, but only as 3/5 of a human being with regards to how representation in Congress would be allotted. Now, the North insisted on this in order to limit the Southern political power. But at the end of the war, the 3/5 rule no longer was in force. Why? Because there were no more slaves in the South or anywhere else. So now each Southerner, whether black or white, would be counted in the census in order to determine representation. All of a sudden, the Republicans realized that they had fought an aggressive war, and the results would be that their arch enemy, Southern Democrats, allied with Northern Democrats, would be stronger than ever and would outvote the radical Republicans. Something had to be done. To maintain control of Congress, the Republicans in Congress refused to recognize the Southern states after the end of the war. They declared that they would treat us as a conquered province with no inherent civil rights that they need to recognize. They passed reconstruction laws that disenfranchised the vast majority of white Southerners. They divided the South into military districts administered by officers of the United States Army, and they set up corrupt puppet governments in the South and used black votes to maintain Republican political control. After making numerous unfulfilled promises to black Southerners, the Republican Party then abandoned the black Southerners in 1880s. The Republican treatment of all Southerners has been so bad that Hiram Rhodes Revels, the first black man to serve in Congress, resigned from the Republican Party. He sent Republican President Grant a very highly critical letter criticizing the Republican actions post-war. This black Republican, who then resigned from the Republican Party, declared in his letter that harmony, friendship, and mutual confidence would have taken place of the bayonet had the Republicans not used black Southerners as political pawns to further Republican political interest. He also denounced the disinformation circulating throughout the Northern press about white Southerners. Both political parties are guilty. Post-war, the Republican Party used black Southerners as disposable political pawns to advance Republican political agenda. In so doing, the Republican Party drove a wedge of distrust and bitterness between Southerners who had and still have more in common with each other than we do with the ruling elite of both political parties in Washington or their crony capitalist allies on Wall Street. Empires throughout history have divided their conquered people and placed them against each other in order to allow the empire to better control the conquered territory. The British Empire did it with the Scots, they did it with the Indians in East India, and the Federal Empire did it with Dixie.
Every cultural and ethnic group in America today is encouraged to display pride in their heritage, except Southerners. Sadly, the heritage and rights of Southerners have been relegated to the trash heap of liberal PC society. Justice requires equality and fair play for the South. After all, Southern rights matter. We insist on justice for all Southerners who wore the gray, black or white, during the War for Southern Independence, and justice for their descendants. The Sons of Confederate Veterans is a non-political Southern heritage organization defending the good name of all honorable Southerners. Check out our website and join us in this noble endeavor.